Joining us on this show this morning as we discuss the unveiling of the newly redesigned Naira notes, how the CBN intends to intensify the monitoring process and interrogate the process of withdrawals, is Mr. Ahmed Bello Umar, Director of Currency Operations, Central Bank of Nigeria. Welcome to the morning show, Mr. Ahmed Umar. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, we've listened to the CBN governor.
Good morning, Doc. Good morning, Dr. Abati.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We've listened to the CBN governor. All the points are in the public domain about how the redesign of the Naira notes, 200, 500, 1,000, will curb inflation, will check counterfeiting, would facilitate monetary policy, would also encourage financial inclusion. The CBN governor has spoken 19 to a dozen again and again about that. The new notes were unveiled yesterday. But experts in the business seem to be skeptical. And I'll quote one of them, and I would like you to respond to that. This is a gentleman called Adedayo Bakari, an analyst with Lagos-based Money Africa, quoted by AP, Associated Press. He says, if you want to curb money laundering, your financial system needs to be better. If you want to curb ransom payment, security needs to be better. If you want to curb inflation, the level at which the total money supply in the economy is growing has to slow down. So it is not about cash, unquote. Adedayo Bakare, analyst with Lagos-based Money Africa. That's one expert making a comment. Other people have said, what is this redesign all about? That what has been done doesn't look innovative. It could have been done with Snapchat. After all, some people are arguing that CBN just carried the Baba Blue and put on the 1,000 Naira notes and just switch colors between 200 Naira and 500 Naira. So what is the innovation? Please, can you respond to some of these criticisms, 24 hours more or less about that after?
Good morning, Dr. Abati. I've seen some of the reviews that have been made by many people. Actually, I don't have issue with people holding an opinion on how best to do a particular process. But what we have done is that the CBN took time to redesign. There are two phases to it. There is the restructuring and there is the redesigning. Restructuring includes maybe change of substrate, maybe change of size, and so many other things. But redesigning basically is just to work around the features, the security features, the security ink you use. For us, we are satisfied with what has been done, and I am just pleading with people that have been so hard on the review to wait and see the physical notes and compare alongside the existing notes so that you'll be able to make a fair judgment of what it is. The main thing is that we are not after colors. We are basically after the volume of cash that is outside the system. 85% of our money is not in the banking system. Yes, the issue about cash relating to that unless there is security, you cannot be able to control other issues. Yes, if you look at the launching, the governor of the central bank made it clear when he was rounding up his speech that he paid tributes to many other organizations, the FinTech Association, the police, the EFCC, ICPC, NFIU, and so on. And they mean too. And you should bear in mind that I think this is a historic moment for Nigeria that we are printing our notes inside, within the country. And the privilege of doing that is only available to 4 out of 54 countries in Africa as enunciated by Mr. President. So, and the assurance that the Governor Central Bank gave that it will become a normal exercise every 5 years so that we'll check all this. So we are hoping that people will, and we are very happy with the reviews. It shows that people are paying attention to what we are doing and that the communications we are doing is getting across to a large population of people. The intention is just to have the attention of people that this is what is happening, and they are very happy about the review.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, yesterday we had your colleague, the Director of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria with us, and we had asked him in anticipation of the unveiling of the new notes to tell us if he could describe to us the differences between the physical differences between the old notes and the new notes. Now, you've mentioned just a few minutes ago, or a few seconds ago, that when we hold the physical copies, we are able to easily identify the improvements or the differences in the notes. It'd be great if you could, following now the unveiling of the unveiled notes, tell us some of the distinct features, just as to assuage the people who have said that there's nothing different aside the color on the notes. Besides that, I'd like you to also speak to the, talking about the fact that it was printed here in Nigeria. Kudos to the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting, but also side by side that the cost of this redesign. Also, side by side that the fact that the CBN governor has said that they are hopeful that this exercise will proceed 5 to 8 years as it is standard global practice. Can we afford to do that every 5 to 8 years?
Okay, thank you. The minting of the current new notes is not coming at any extra cost over and above what we usually do as part of our indent for the year. So it is not, if we had engaged in a complete restructuring, that would result in reducing the size or the subtrade that we will use. That will have cost more money. But what we are doing is just normal indent. We stopped the production of all the nodes we are redesigning for the remaining part of the year, so that we can be able to produce the balance in this one. So it's the same pricing as we used to do, and it's within the approved indent limit of the bank. Yes, some of the features that we have, actually, we want to bring the graphical ones that will be, we are working on, we only got the physical notes for us to review some of the areas that people should concentrate for the purpose of enlightenment. And we are working with the corporate communication and the mint so that we clearly spell out some of the things without necessarily compromising the security features. But I want to assure you that even the ink we use is a security item. The positioning of some of the features there, the thread, the sub-thread, what you have at the intaglio level and so on. These are some of the things that are embedded in the system. Some of them we don't need to say them, because if we are doing that, it's like we are giving a head start to people who want to counterfeit in the next 5 years when we have another opportunity of review. But the cost is still within the normal cost we usually incur. I have seen people banding a lot of figures. Yes, those figures are not correct, and we are not, what we are producing is basically just about 500 million singles of notes. And what we have for a year is, for this current year, is about 2.1 billion pieces, which will have a face value of like 1 trillion naira. Just is about 1.1 trillion naira. So all the balances of the 200, 500, 1,000 that we are supposed to produce in this current year, we stop them, and we are replacing them with these ones at no extra cost.
So let's talk about the cost implication, the cost of the money used to print money. Normally, I think the threshold used to be about 70 billion, but as of last year, you've been able to reduce it to about the 50 billion threshold. What's the cost, of this process? And also, apart from the cost of printing, the logistical cost too should be iterated in the calculations, so Nigerians get a hang of, the cost of all of this material. Secondly, I'd also like to go one step further. One of the major arguments is the fact that, yes, you'll reduce the amount of money in circulation, so that automatically it tackles inflation. And you have done a multi-pronged approach, hence bringing this forward, I suspect, hence bringing this forward in such a way that the monetary policy CRR 32.5%, you increased interest rate 16.5%, then you're attacking it also with this, sort of like getting money in that too much money is in circulation. So it's sort of like a two-pronged approach thing you're doing. But the question is, inflation has always been about the legacy problem predominantly. So take, for instance, this morning, there's a massive fuel scarcity in Lagos, and that's also going to feed into inflation levels. I mean, so what will you say as regards that in a case like this?
Thank you, Rufai. From the date of announcement to date, that's almost about 29 days today, the volume of cash that have been deposited into the system in respect of 200, 500, and 1,000 is barely 165 billion, with 1,000 naira accounting for 86 billion and 500 naira accounting for 51 billion. And the 200 is just about 7 billion. So if you look at it, what we are looking for is what we have is far from our level of what we intend to get back into the system. If you have so much of your cash outside, there you can make meaningful planning. The volume of cash outside is not allowing for any economic activity to take place because it's not in the system. Even the person who keeps money, say for 5 years, if you keep 1 million for 5 years, it's not the same 1 million naira. The value has gone down. But what we are saying, most of the issues are related. So long as we continue to import most of the things we have, which includes the oil, the fuel that you are saying that we have queues today. In Abuja, it has cleared today. There is no, it's just the normal morning rush you see around in Abuja. But I know it's tied to the cost of the international cost of the fuel in the market, and is denominated in dollar, because even if you are buying the fuel in Nigeria, they are not going to sell it to you in naira. It is going to be in dollar. So by the time you convert and relate to the value of the naira, obviously you find that you have less dollar available and more of naira available, and that will translate to the fact that some marketers may not be importing this fuel because they feel maybe it doesn't give them any latitude to make a good profit. But the approach to improving a society is not only taken by the monetary authority. The fiscal authority is doing some, the NNPC is doing some, and you can see from the fiscal side, the executive, where they have licensed modular refineries, and the biggest of them is the Dangote refinery, which we are hoping that by the time they start production, the dollars we used to lose in terms of importing refined crude oil will be better used for other things. Even though we pay in the same price, but the cost of transportation will be an advantage to the people who will be involved in the value chain of fuel distribution in Nigeria. So for the inflation, if you have a better way of transmitting your monetary policy, and you have control over your monetary aggregates, obviously you have a better planning. The results may not be seen in this quarter or next quarter, but it's a journey that we have to start somewhere, and we have started that journey since October 26th.
Mr. Umar, two things. Number one, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, when he was making his statement yesterday, made the point that when you go to the banks these days, they are going to ask you for a lot of data. Your NIN, your BVN, but at the same time, the same Mr. Emefiele is saying the whole idea of this redesign is to promote financial inclusion. So it will look like, on one hand, you want more people to come into the system. At the same time, the way some people will interpret it is that the CBN wants to turn banks into police stations, into a stop and search unit of the Nigerian government, where you go there, they will ask you for the BVN of your grandmother, and they will ask you, okay, this woman you want to send money to, go and bring a marriage certificate. Wouldn't that be counterproductive? That's one. Number two, you yourself were quoted at a media briefing as saying, okay, 165 billion has been put back into the system, and that you suspect that as people try to meet the deadline of January 31, which Mr. Emefiele says is sacrosanct, that there will be a stampede. Since you have been quoted as saying there will be a stampede, what is the CBN doing to make sure that that stampede does not happen? I know banks have been told to open on Saturday. Some banks have been saying they will be available till 6 p.m. But if banks have become are likely to become police stations, even all that objective will be defeated.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Abati. Let me start with the first one. The CBN or any of the banks is not demanding anything extra over and above what was demanded before the exercise. For the tiered accounts, there are certain level of account and identification that are required. The BBN is a requirement in the banking system. And I think it still remains the only one. Nobody is asking somebody to go and bring anything extra over and above. If you want to open an account, you open. In fact, there was a relaxation of the third KYC that people are free to open those accounts and put, so that if it is their money, they don't have anything to worry. We are aware of people who transact in cash in high volumes in the Balogun market, in Aba, in Kanu, Sabongari market. So we know people have cash. But then, if it is your money, why do you need to worry? What they ask you is your BBN, which will be enrolled by the bank. It's just to be able to, it's an international requirement that you don't open an account anyhow because of terrorism financing, even if we are not looking at the money laundering aspect. But I have not had any information that the banks are asking people questions to bring marriage certificate or this and this as if they are under any interrogation. Nobody is interrogating anybody. And I'm not aware of any agency. We have a committee that is made of other stakeholders, and if we have such information, we will follow it up and see what we can do.
Well, the question about the stampede that you talked about, the likely stampede.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I didn't say there will be stampede. I'm saying that typical things we do in this country. When we had experiences from the NIN, the NCC phone number registration, and so on, we have given over 100 days or almost 100 days for people to do this exercise. We are almost used 1/3 of that period, and there doesn't seem to be action. We are aware that people may be banking on the fact that during the early tide season, people will do a lot of activities that require cash. But we are hoping that people should not count on the fact that there will be extension. The confirmation is that 31st January remains the last day for the exchange. So if you have so much money, and with the volume of money that we see outside based on our records, 2.7 billion, 165 billion is a far cry from what we expect. We expect to see a lot of action in terms of volume of people. And we complain that even some of the big banks that we know have a large base of customers, they have not made any significant deposit. And that's why myself and the Director of Banking Supervision made an appeal that they have structured way of making deposits so that banks don't only come on a Saturday to cause burden on the branches that will receive. Banks are being scheduled now from Monday to Saturday to be able to bring in their money. And I'm using this opportunity to appeal to the banks. They have asked for so many concessions. Opening on Saturday, removing cost of processing, waiver on the kind of box they use. We said they can use Garawa boxes, which will carry 5 standard CBN boxes. That's about... five standard CBN boxes, so that we will be able to keep them with us and process and give them back their containers, so that they don't tie the problem to the fact that we didn't give them sufficient boxes for their exercise. I hope people will just take a cue and make sure that they use the remaining over 60 days to make some significant deposits, so that we won't have to rush in January or end of January.
All right, thank you very much. 60 days to go. Do not rush. Ensure that you're able to deposit the cash that you have left so that you're not caught in potential stampede. Very quickly, sir, I'd like to ask you, some of the concerns of Nigerians over the retainership of, or rather holding the liquidity of cash rather than depositing in the banks is security. How does the CBN hope to address the concerns of security? Because despite the many interventions, BVN, NIN, to prevent or to curb the incidences of security issues, it still exists, and people are reluctant to deposit their money in banks because of these issues. What are some of the things that the CBN are looking to do to assure Nigerians that their money is safe in the bank?
Okay, thank you. The CBN has a department called Consumer Protection Department, and what they do is a resolution of issues that may arise out of transactions that will occur between customers and banks. Some of it is from either non-dispense of cash at ATM or somebody reporting that he didn't make a transaction, it was done by somebody different from the customer. CBN always intervene to make sure that the issue is resolved in favor of customer. We have a lot of safeguards. At least we'll be able to know who will draw the money. We'll be able to know if it is a collusion that happens. And then the banks are made to pay the customer. The incidents, you see, it's like you say because cars have accident, you will use cars. That you have one isolated incident in a bank out of hundreds of millions of transactions doesn't mean that the banking system is weak or bad. We will continue to improve on the safeguards, and we will also appeal to people too, because some of the cases that you are complaining about people not being secure about, somebody attaching his PIN number behind his card or giving somebody to use his card, and then he comes to complain that somebody has taken his money. By the time you print the picture of the person who took the money at the ATM, you find that it's somebody known to him, or somebody has given the card to use. So we will always listen to new ways, new suggestions. We are on the lookout, and we have a common industry standard for ensuring that there is a minimal or zero fraud in the system. So people are assured that their money is safe, and whatever happened, there is a safeguard that will protect them. It's still better than keeping your money in a place where it will be flooded or it will be burned by fire and so on. Okay. So the bank is still the best bet where you can keep your money.
Okay, so I asked a question before. I said, what's the cost of all of this process? And also I'm saying, add to it the logistics cost. The money you will use to fly it around, push the money around. And when are we going to be able to collect this new notes from the banks?
Okay, thank you, Rufai. The consistently for the last 5 years, we have made the efforts to reduce the volume of notes that we produce. And, you know, even though we reduce the volume of notes, but the cost of material goes up because of the disruption in value chain from several activities that are happening around the globe. What we had for the previous year was like 59 billion for over 2 billion pieces that will give you over 1 trillion naira. And you see, even though we put the right figures on our website and give people the description, some people just mischievously turn the figures to look as if we spend more money to produce less notes. Yes, there is cost to the subtrade. Is cheaper for us because we mint here in Nigeria, and then there is the cost of distribution. The distribution we do by air is to like 19 locations, and from that location we do by road. The CBN undertakes that one to distribute to the other branches. There is a cost to everything, but the cost we have is not compared to if you compare with the cost of what they do to produce the dollar, which is over $1 billion budget for minting in a particular year. We are in the region of 40-60 billion in the last 5 years. And we are hoping that the cost will come down, because if we adopt or drive the adoption of cashless and e-Naira, we are going to see less volume of cash. And there is no need for distribution, because the e-Naira, you can distribute it across the country. If people use electronic channels, the cost is removed there. So the cost of storage, distribution, and destruction will be removed from the value chain. We are hoping that we'll see the benefit in the next 2-3 years as we reduce the quantum of notes that we are producing in subsequent years.
Go to be banks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Umar. We've run out of time, but we hope we'll see those clean and crisp notes that the president promised, and that will happen very soon. Thank you very much.